Good afternoon, respected Dr. L.S. Maravi sir, Dr. Anurag Sahni sir, Dr. Tanmay Sarkar sir, Dr. Digambar Mitra sir. So today our class is on examination of the spine. Spine examination begins with the introduction of yourself and introduction of the patient. And first you have to get consent for examining the spine as it requires the exposure of the body part. Our principle of examining spine depends upon the narrowing down of our diagnosis. Spine examination begins with the history. We ask patients chief complaints with chronological order, and first symptom is the pain. What is the nature of the pain? Suppose, and what is the location of the pain? Suppose it is upper back pain, lower back pain, middle back pain. So then we identify the area of the spine affected. Whether it is associated with radiation, something in cervical spine to the radiation to the arm, or in lumbar spine, radiation to the leg, and in thoracic spine, intercostal radiation. So we know about the nature of the pain, what are the aggravating factors, what are the relieving factors, like in morning stiffness, if there is a spondyloarthritis, if there is an unstable spine, so then the activity activates the pain. If there is a rest pain, something in tumor, red flag sign, we have to know. So we, in cases of spine examination, we first locate what is the location of the pain and what is the nature of the pain. Then whether it is radiating or not, whether it is associated with deformity of the spine. When patients come to OPD and he says that there is something, मेरे पीठ में कुवड़ जैसा निकल गया है. So this is a very significant finding of the spine, and then we have to assess, take the history about the gait, whether patients need support for the walking or walking without support. Is there any weakness over arm or leg? So these are the history pertaining to the neurological problem. In spine examination, when we examine the patient, we always consider that our examination should not aggravate the neurological deficit. If the patient says there is a weakness over walking, then we are very pertinent to examine the patient. If it is a myelopathy, cervical spine, if we examine the cervical spine movement, we may land up with the quadriplegia. In cases of the post spine, if there is a patient has a neurological deficit, don't examine thoroughly spine movement. At that time, we just examine patients with the log rolling in the bed. And we have to take the other history like bowel and bladder history, and we should not miss the history taking of sexual history. With the male patient, we can frankly ask. If the patient is female, then we can take the help of the sister to get that history. Now the gait. If the patient is walker, what is the gait of the patient? Does he walk with a tandem normal gait, or he is walking with the broad base gait in cases of myelopathy, or short step gait in cases of post spine, to avoid any jerk over the spine, or high stepping gait in cases of foot drop, and waddling gait in cases of myopathy, significant myopathy in some metabolic diseases like osteomyelitic myopathy or thyrotoxic myopathy. So this signals you to think what is the gait of the patient, and if there is a seizure gait in cases of hypertonia, paralysis, or if there is a sensory ataxia, something a metabolic vitamin B12 deficiency. Patient has a symptom and patient comes to your OPD and he unable to walk with the eye closed. So then you suspect there are some sensory abnormality, and this is the heel and toe walking. It is a very significant in cases of the radiculopathy. if the patient has L5 radiculopathy or S1 radiculopathy. So these can notify in the beginning if patient is having a low back pain, this problem, unable to walk on the toes, unable to walk on the heels. So then you can differentiate with the radiculopathy L5 or S1. Then after history, you jump to the past history, and that should be related to your the history in general. If there is a, you are suspecting this is the Port spine case, then you have to ask the history of the previous pulmonary TB, previous immunization history. If you are suspecting from the history that this is a simple discitis, pain over the spine due to discitis, then you have to ask the history of immunologically compromised. It is as well as in the Port spine also. And you have to ask the history of immunization, and you should see the BCG mark in cases of the Port spine. And if you are suspecting the problem of disc prolapse, then you have to ask about the patient long sitting job or the physically heavy weightlifting or sports injury. So these are the history, and your history should be relevant with your pursuit history points. Then we come to the examination, and examination already includes like other examination, general examination, and systemic examination. And here in systemic examination, since we are dealing with the patients with spine, we have to exclude the abnormalities of the higher function and cranial nerve here itself. Then we have to examine serious respiratory examination. Serious examination is important in cases of sympathetic problem, and abdominal examination is very important in cases of the fracture distraction injury. In spine, traumatic spine, fracture distraction injury, almost 40% of cases has the abdominal problem and also the associated injury. Then our examination of the spine starts with the attitude of the patient. So this is as well other examination. We examine the attitude of the patient in standing, in sitting, and in lying down. And the attitude also includes the same basic point. What is the head is central, both shoulder are same level, ASIS both same level, patella, medial malleolus, and from the back, inferior angle of scapula, PSIS, and from the side, you have to notify there is any aggravated, exaggerated kyphosis or lordotic deformity, or absent lordotic or kyphotic deformity. In cases of flat back syndrome, there is an absence of lordotic spine of the lumbar spine. And in cases of the Port spine, there may be aggravated kyphotic deformity over the spine. If there is a fixation of the spine, there is a loss of kyphosis. And there is some attitude like the Port spine child, the Port spine patient sometimes come to your OPD with keeping both the hand over the knee joint. Suppose this patient comes this to offload the weight transmission from the spine, and you have to see about there is a costopelvic symmetry or spine balance. Patient is having the balance of the spine or not. Then the patient taking some abnormal attitude, he may be offloading the spine. And then spine examination includes the local spine examination to identify the vertebra affected. Which vertebra is affected? So this gives you basic idea of the local examination, and it includes inspection, palpation, and movement. And as I already told you that movement should only be tested when you are not supposed to aggravate the neurological deficit. You should keep in mind if there is a neurological deficit and serious, then you have to restrain yourself for the over-examining the movement of the patient. And then second part of the spine examination is neurological examination to ascertain any spinal segment level affected. That includes again the motor examination, sensory examination, and autonomic function. Then we start with the basic points of the inspection. Again, inspection should be done from the front, side, and back It may be done in standing, sitting, or lying down position. In exam, usually we prefer the patient to examine in the lying down position from front, side, and uh, from front. So in inspection, as other cases, we examine the skin condition. Is there any swelling, central furrow deep, paraspinal muscle spasm, or is there any pus discharging sinuses, healed scar, previous surgical scar? So basic points that should be relevant to your history. We are only examining the patient as furrow is deep and there is a paraspinal muscle spasm that may be due to traumatic spinal injury, that may be due to infection in cases of pyogenic discitis or in cases of false spine. But these symptoms missing in cases of tumors and something metabolic diseases. Then deformity comes. Again, deformity should be seen from the side, and it includes like knuckle deformity. Then there's a single vertebra collapse, as you see in the any metastatic pathological fracture or benign tumor like eosinophilic granuloma, or in cases of central body collapse of the port spine. So then you can see a knuckle-like deformity. This is the knuckle. This is the knuckle. So knuckle-like deformity patients, you see the back and there's something, one knuckle is present. Then you have, that should be alarm to you that there may be collapse of the vertebra that producing the knuckle. But in cases of angular deformity, then more than one vertebra involved, 2 to 3 vertebra involved, then there is something like deformity like the angle, and this is a very typical deformity of the port spine. But in cases of multiple vertebra collapse, in cases of port spine also, in cases of osteoporotic fractures, and in Sturman's disease, there is a rounded or gibbous pattern of deformity you may see. Then you have to examine patient, inspect patient thoroughly from front, side, and back for any fullness over and above the iliac crest. So you may know there's a port abscess collection in cases of port spine. So you have to examine, if you are suspecting the port spine, then you have to examine the cold abscess pocket of the patient. And if there is a fracture, in cases of fracture distraction injury, particularly, you may see the step over one vertebra above and down. You may feel the may see in cases of infection. Inspection. In inspection, we just locate what is the site of the lesion, and in inspection we say that the swelling present in the upper back, lower back, and now we are confirming our inspectory finding. Then we go for the palpation, and here we start with the marking of the landmark of the spine. So as you know, the landmark starts with the C7. Then we are examining the thoracic and lumbar spine. C7, it is the first prominent spinous process. Then most prominent is C1, and then we examine the upper superior angle of the scapula, that is correspond to D3, and inferior angle of the scapula correspond to D7, and in the back iliac crest correspond to L4, and PIS correspond to S2, and umbilicus corresponds to the from front to P10. So these are the level you have to mark in cases of palpation, and now palpation onwards, you just give the exact location of the lesion you suspect, whether what is the vertebral level affected in cases of palpation. And as I told that in cases of paraplegic and quadriplegic, examination is very cautious, and we have to examine the patient in supine and guarded rolling lateral position, and we should not aggravate the neurological deficit from our side. And we should see if there are any changes over the examination from the standing, sitting, and lying down. Now the palpation starts as in general with the local temperature and local tenderness. Again, the local tenderness, and we confirm the findings of the inspection with the vertebral level. What is the vertebral level? Here we should say, like this diagram, this is the, in cases of inspection, this is the upper thoracic, but in cases of palpation, you should tell that it is from this vertebral level to that vertebral level to identify the exact detail. And we have again palpate the paraspinal swelling and palpate the prominence and depression of the spinous process and central furrow and the deformity again in the palpation. Local tenderness, for the local tenderness, if there is a lesion is superficial over the spinous process or facet joint, then you can elicit this problem by the direct pressure. And if there is a, you are suspecting the lesion in the vertebral body level, then you have to elicit tenderness by the twisting pressure. And this is the deep third tenderness, is a general tenderness to ascertain if is there any skip lesion to other side. So these are the movements of cervical that includes flexion, extension, lateral flexion and rotation, provided the patient has no significant neurological deficit. And in thoracic spine, only we can test the rotatory movements of the thoracic spine. These are the lumbar spine movements. If the patient is normal, having no significant neurological deficit, so we can elicit the lumbar flexion, lumbar extension, and what is the right lateral flexion and left lateral flexion. And there are some special tests to know the flexibility of the spine, whether the spine is normally flexible, normal, having the normal this well hydrated disc, then the spine has a nice good movement, and this is the modified Fowler test for examining the normal lumbar flexion. We mark the both PSIS and join the line, and we mark 1.5 centimeter down and 1.10 centimeter above, and we ask the patient to bend forward, and if this 15 centimeter increases more than 20 centimeter, then this is the normal lumbar flexion. That may be limited in cases of ankylosing spondylitis, in cases of lumbar disc prolapse, in cases of lumbar canal stenosis, that may be limited. And if you are suspecting with the lumbar ankylosing spondylitis, then the chest expansion movement is mandatory, and it is measured at the level of the nipple, and if it is less than 2.5 centimeters, then it is most probably the patient affected with the ankylosis. There are some special tests if you are suspecting the root cervical spine root problem. Then this is the abduction relief sign with the shoulder abduction sign in cases of radiculopathy of the cervical root, and this is the swirling maneuver to elicit the pain over the cervical spine. But these tests are not done with in every patient. Then you have to test only the patient when you are in history, you are suspecting the problem. And the test for sacroiliac joint is not also mandatory in every patient. Then you are suspecting there's a SI joint affection, then you have to test. There are various ways of the testing sacroiliac joint. A special test for radiculopathy, if there is a lower lumbar root affected, then as you all know, the straight leg raising test and Bragard test, Bowstein test, and cross SLR is pathognomonic for the lower lumbar root L5, L4, L5, S1. But in cases of upper lumbar affection, you should test the femoral nerve stress test. And then auscultation, whether it is necessary to auscultate the spine. Yes, it is necessary to auscultate the spine because spine is go with the vascular structure hand by hand, and this is the one published study with a huge aortic aneurysm and eroding the back anterior aspect of the vertebral body, and patient presenting with the low back pain. So always auscultate the spine with the suspecting is there any aortic aneurysm, whether it is abdominal or thoracic. Now our local examination completes with the inspection, palpation, and movement, and we have ascertained till now that these vertebral levels are affected. Something we say our level of affection B10, B11, L1, B12, L1. So these are the vertebral levels we are identified till the palpation. Now, since the spine has the neurological system also, so now we jump to the examination of spine to identify any neurological level of injury. As you know, the spinal cord extends from foramen magnum to the interspace between B12 to L1. The level of cord segment and the vertebral body level varies. In cervical spine, in vertebral body level, you have to add 1 to get the spinal segment level. And in cases of B1 to B6, you have to add 2. Suppose you are suspecting the lesion in B2, B3 vertebra, then you have to add 2 so that your spinal cord problem will be B3 or B4. In cases of B7 to B9, add 3. Suppose you are suspecting with the vertebral level B8, then your spinal segment level should be B11. You have to add 3. Then in B10, it is L1, L2 segment, and B11, that is the symptom of spinal segment will be of L3, L4 spinal segment, and B12, L5 spinal segment. And upper L1 vertebral body, there is a sacral and coccygeal spinal segment. So this is a very important slide. Examination of the neurological examination includes, as you all know, motor function. In cases of, you have to see the bulk of muscle. In cases of flaccid paralysis or spastic paralysis, there is a wasting of the muscle. Is there a wasting, unilateral wasting, a bilateral wasting? So you have to identify the unilateral lesion or whole spinal cord lesion, and you have to examine the tone of the muscle to identify whether it is a hypertonia or whether it is a hypotonia in cases of lesion. And you have to examine the power of the muscle and reflexes, coordination, and involuntary movement to ascertain to decide the motor level of the spinal segment affected. So this is the ACI scale, American Spine Injury Association, and these are the motor scoring system. As you all know, 0 to 5, 0 means total paralysis, and 5 means full movement, normal movement. Then you have to examine, the question comes, you have to examine full whole muscles of the group, or you have to examine the selective muscles. So this ACI scale gave the beautifully identified the key muscles to examine. As what is your aim of the spine examination? Your aim of spine examination is not to examine whole body of the patient. Your aim of the examination is to ascertain what is the motor level affected. So then in ACI scale, there is a key muscles. If you want to identify the problem of the C5, then you have to identify the elbow flexor, biceps muscle, and for the C6 level, you have to test brachioradialis muscle, wrist extensor, and for the testing the C7, you have to test triceps muscle, elbow extensor, and these are the C8, finger flexor, and finger abduction C1. So we are testing these muscles, and we are testing just elbow flexion, and this is elbow flexion is normal. Then we label that C5 is okay. So in motor examination, we test from the normal to abnormal side. Then if this C6 is 5 power, then we say C6 cord segment is okay, normal. Then C7, C8, C1 like that. And in thoracic spine, there is no examination. Here again, we come to the lumbar spine. In OPD, we can test hip flexor. If hip flexor is 5 by 5, then we say L2 cord segment L2 motor level is normal. And if there is a knee extensor, then L3 5 by 5, then this is the quadriceps muscle we are testing. The L3 normal for ankle dorsiflexion, L4 long toe extensor, L5 yeah EHL. This is EHL, L5 or ankle plantar flexion S1. So we are testing these certain muscle, and for the sacral we test the voluntary anal contraction for the S4, S5 segment. So these are the motor testing for the spine, and with this we ascertain the what is the motor level of the injury. With that level of absent, we say this is the knee extensor is not possible, then this is the L3 segment is injured. L3 segment is not working. And now, what are the important of the non-key muscles? So these are the previously slide. There are key muscles. Then your ACI scale is B, and you have confusion with the B and C. So then the ACI scale says that you have to examine also these non-key muscles to ascertain the level, whether it is B or whether it is C. Because in the C, there are more than half of the muscles are powerless. Now we come to grading of the reflex. Why we test reflex? Again, motor examination, motor power gives the clues to certain motor segment level. This reflex examination again support your diagnosis in grading of the reflex. There are 4 grading. In 0, this is absent. In 1 grade, that as a normal ligature, and if we say the reflex is brisk, that is the as a normal leisure, and 3 is very brisk, and 4th is if there is a clonus. And again, clonus is divided into 3 types. If there is a mild clonus, 2 contractions per stimulus, moderate 3 to 5, and more than 6 contractions per stimulus, that is the severe clonus. So again, we examine the patellar clonus and ankle clonus. So this is the reflex. Again, in the reflex, when we are examining the reflex, we are testing the nerve root. In cases of abdominal, we test the D7 to D12 nerve root, and in cremasteric, L1, L2, in anal deep, S2, S3, S4, again in bulbocavernous, S2, S3, and S4, and in plantar reflex, this is the Baranski sign for the differentiating the upper motor neuron lesion and lower motor neuron lesion. So these reflex examination again add to identify your motor level. Then again, this is the deep tendon reflex, biceps for the C5, supinator for C6, triceps for C7, knee reflex for L3, ankle reflex for S1. So why are you examining for the reflexes? Again, to ascertain what is my motor level of the patient. Then after motor examination, we jump to what is the sensory system examination, because the spinal cord has a 3 components. One is motor component, second is spinothalamic that identify the pain and temperature, and third is posterior column that identify the touch, position sense, and vibration. In sensory examination, we had examined from abnormal to normal side. In motor examination, we examined from normal to abnormal side. Here, sensory examination, we examined from abnormal to normal side. And again, there is a scoring of the sensory examination, whether it is absent, altered, or normal. So there you are aware of these dermatomes. There are various types of dermatomes to examine over the spine. In particular, in a OP basis, if you examining the first, we examine this deltoid C5. For the C6, we examine thumb and index finger. For C7, we examine this middle finger. For C8, we examine these 2 fingers. For the rapid neurological examination in OPD, for the lumbar spine, we just examine over medial malleolus sensation to ascertain L4 radicular nerve. We examine over the front of the foot for L5 and lateral side of the foot for the S1. So these are rapid tests for the sensory examination. And when the level comes, suppose this level comes, you are examining like this C plus something L1, and the level is absent below L1, and here present above L1. So this is the sensory level of the L1. L1 particular. So your sensory level L1, you can identify what is the level of your spinal segment affected. Then again, third part is the bowel bladder is also very important, whether it is the spastic bladder, whether it is a flaccid bladder. In the spastic bladder, the whole tract is intact. The lesion may be something lumbar, upper lumbar, dorsal, cervical. Here the tract of the presynaptic and postsynaptic and